The night Manhattan glittered like a curtain of diamonds was the same night Lena Whitford's life collapsed in a single, brutal breath. At 1:47 a.m., her phone buzzed on the nightstand beside her hospital-grade prenatal vitamins. She thought it was Travis finally texting back. Instead, it was a bank alert flashing across her cracked iPhone screen. Charge approved. The Plaza Hotel, Presidential Suite. 7 months pregnant, Lena pushed herself upright, one hand bracing her aching belly as the baby kicked hard, almost as if sensing the storm breaking inside her chest. She stared at the notification, reading it again, then again, her throat tightening. Travis had told her he was working late, preparing documents for an investor from Boston. He'd kissed her forehead on the way out, told her to rest, even tucked a wool blanket around her legs before leaving their Park Avenue apartment.
But he wasn't working. He wasn't even alone. Lena tapped the transaction details and another charge popped up. $50,000 wire transfer to an unlisted account she had never seen. Her fingers trembled. $50,000 wasn't a romantic escape or an impulsive splurge. It was something darker, something secret, something Travis never expected her to find. Her breath hitched as she opened the security app connected to their building's lobby feed. She scrolled until she saw him, Travis, earlier that evening, adjusting his tie, checking his reflection in the elevator mirror. And beside him, stepping in with impossible confidence, was Ilara June, the assistant who always laughed a little too loudly at his jokes. Ilara's hand slid onto his chest just before the elevator doors closed. Travis didn't push it away. Lena's chest tightened until she couldn't breathe.
Every memory of their marriage, every whispered promise, every tender moment, all of it cracked like glass inside her. She curled forward, her forehead pressing against her knees as her vision blurred. "Not tonight," she whispered to her baby. "Please, not tonight." But life is rarely kind to women who suffer silently. The apartment around her felt colder, the city lights outside sharper, almost mocking. The air carried the faint scent of Travis's cologne lingering on his jacket hanging near the door, evidence of a life she thought she was building with a man she trusted. She grabbed the jacket, burying her face into it, wishing it could lie to her. Wishing the truth didn't feel like a knife twisting deeper with every heartbeat. Then her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, a blurred elevator camera still frame sent anonymously. Travis. Ilara. His hand on her waist, her lips close to his ear. The timestamp matched the hotel charge. Lena's shaking stopped, completely. The pain didn't fade, no, it sharpened into something colder, steadier, almost frighteningly clear. She wiped her tears. She breathed once, deeply, and she reached for her laptop. Not to beg, not to confront, not to fall apart, but to log into their joint accounts. And somewhere between the ache, the betrayal, and the quiet fury building in her chest, a single, dangerous thought formed. If he wanted a life without her, he was about to get exactly what he asked for. Lena Whitford wasn't the kind of woman anyone expected to break. She was quiet, diligent, almost painfully gentle. At Sterling Group, she blended into the beige walls of the 32nd floor office, just another analyst crunching numbers behind a glowing monitor. Most of her co-workers barely remembered her name, and yet she carried burdens that would crush the average person. An orphan at 15, buried in student loans, and now 7 months pregnant with a child she had prayed would change everything. But life had a cruel way of testing people already on their knees. Lena stood in the dim kitchen of the Park Avenue apartment,
one hand braced on the marble counter, the other supporting her belly as another wave of exhaustion washed over her. She hadn't slept properly in weeks. Travis's late nights, his clipped tone, his sudden disgust toward her growing body, all of it had eaten away at whatever confidence she once had. She remembered when things were different, before the coldness, before the lies. Back when Travis used to make her French toast on quiet Sunday mornings. Back when he'd press a kiss to her hair as she typed on her old MacBook, pretending to be annoyed when she worked too late.
Back when he held her like she mattered. She used to believe he saved her from loneliness, from instability, from the fear of having no one in the world. She had no parents, no siblings, no extended family to call. When Travis proposed, she thought she was finally building a home that couldn't be taken away. Tonight, that illusion shattered. She walked slowly toward the living room window, the lights of Manhattan stretching beneath her like a kingdom she never belonged to. Her reflection hovered in the glass, a woman swollen by pregnancy, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled into a messy knot, wearing an oversized sweater that belonged to Travis before he stopped letting her borrow his clothes. She looked like someone who had lost everything. Maybe she had. A tear slipped down her cheek, but she quickly wiped it away. Not because she wasn't hurting, she was breaking, but because she refused to cry loud enough for anyone to hear. She'd spent her whole life surviving quietly, but betrayal changes a woman. Motherhood changes her even more. And betrayal during motherhood? That creates something fierce. She pressed her hand to her stomach. "I'm here," she whispered to the small life inside her. "Even if no one is here for me, I'm here." In that moment, fragile, trembling, alone, Lena had no idea she was standing at the beginning of the most powerful transformation of her life. The elevator footage wasn't supposed to exist. Security cameras in luxury buildings often looped or blurred, protecting the privacy of residents who paid more for secrecy than square footage. But fate, cruel, sharp-edged fate, had decided to show Lena everything she was never meant to see. It started with a single anonymous message, a simple link, no text, no explanation. At first, Lena hesitated, her thumb hovering above the screen. Trolls, spam, wrong number, anything would have been easier than the truth buried behind that link. But something in her chest pushed her forward, a whisper, a warning. She tapped it. A video popped open, grainy, dim. The elevator of their Park Avenue building. Timestamp, 10:42 p.m. Just 2 hours before Travis claimed he was still in the office. The doors slid open and there he was, her husband, laughing in a way she hadn't heard in months. His shoulders relaxed, his tie loosened, his charm effortless. But he wasn't alone. Ilara June stepped inside with him, her hand sliding delicately up his arm, her red lips curved in a way that twisted Lena's stomach. Travis didn't flinch, didn't pull away, didn't even glance around to check for cameras. He wanted it. He enjoyed it. He let it happen. The elevator doors closed, leaving the two of them inside a mirrored box that seemed far too small for the kind of betrayal happening in it. The camera caught everything. Travis leaning in to whisper something into Ilara's ear, Ilara giggling with her fingers brushing his jaw. And finally, the moment that shattered Lena's last sliver of denial. Travis placing his hand firmly, possessively, on Ilara's waist. The man who wouldn't touch his pregnant wife anymore. The man who recoiled when Lena tried to kiss him last week. The man who claimed stress, exhaustion, pressure. He wasn't exhausted. He was lying. Lena felt her knees weaken.
She sank onto the couch, one hand gripping the edge, the other clutching her belly as her baby shifted restlessly, as if even the unborn child sensed the heartbreak flooding through her. Her breath came out in short, ragged bursts. Her ears rang. Tears blurred the screen, but the image burned itself into her memory so violently, she knew she'd never unsee it. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." But the truth didn't soften just because she wasn't ready for it. And then another message arrived. This one contained a close-up frame. Ilara kissing Travis's neck, and his hand lifting her face toward his. Lena's trembling stopped again. The world didn't end in explosions. Sometimes it ended in pixels. Before betrayal carved her life in two, Lena Whitford used to believe she was living inside a small, fragile miracle. It hadn't been perfect, but it had been theirs. The little routines, the whispered promises, the quiet dreams, they were pieces she clung to because they made her feel like she finally belonged somewhere in the world. Just 6 months earlier, mornings in their Park Avenue apartment were warm, almost tender. Travis would brew coffee in the stainless steel machine he insisted on buying from a boutique in Soho. The scent would drift down the hallway, mixing with the soft hum of the city waking outside. Lena would appear with her hair still damp from the shower, wearing one of Travis's oversized shirts back when he still let her steal them, while he read stock updates on his MacBook Pro. He used to smile at her then, touch her lightly on the back, ask about her day. But pregnancy changed things. Or maybe it only revealed them. At first, it was subtle. Travis working later, missing dinner, taking calls in the bedroom with the door closed. Then came the excuses. "You're too emotional. I'm under pressure. We'll talk later." His voice grew sharper, colder, like she was suddenly an inconvenience he couldn't afford. Still, Lena tried. She tried so hard. She decorated the nursery alone, painting soft sage-green walls slowly, carefully, one Sunday at a time. She folded tiny onesies she bought on sale, imagining Travis holding their child for the first time. Every kick she felt made her heart open wider, fuller, even though Travis barely touched her stomach anymore. 2 weeks before the night at the plaza, she'd surprised him at the office with lunch. A simple gesture, something she used to do often. He looked irritated, embarrassed, like she wasn't his wife, just a problem arriving at the wrong moment. When they got home that night, he didn't even ask why her eyes were red. Instead, he commented on how messy the living room looked. A blanket draped over the sofa, an empty tea mug on the table, signs of a pregnant woman simply trying to make it through her day. Lena apologized. She apologized for everything. Her exhaustion, her cravings, her anxiety, her body changing faster than she could understand. And every apology carved another quiet wound inside her. Looking back now, watching the elevator footage replay in her mind like a cruel movie, she finally saw it. The marriage hadn't broken overnight. It had been cracking for months. She just kept trying to glue it back together alone. Cruelty doesn't always arrive as shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it slips quietly into a marriage, soft at first, nearly invisible, until the person living inside it can no longer recognize the shape of their own life. That was how Travis Whitford dismantled Lena, not with violence, but with a slow, deliberate unraveling that left no bruises except the ones blooming inside her heart. It began with small comments, not enough to fight about, just enough to sting. "You're eating again? You've really let yourself go since the pregnancy. Maybe you should focus on your job instead of nesting all the time." He said them casually, like he was offering advice, but every word carved deeper than the last. Lena tried to brush it off, telling herself all husbands struggled during pregnancy. That stress made people say things they didn't mean. Yet the more she excused him, the more he pushed. He stopped coming to doctor's appointments, stopped asking if she'd slept, stopped touching her entirely. One night, as Lena packed a small hospital bag, just in case, she whispered to herself, Travis walked past without looking up from his phone. He didn't ask what she was doing, didn't ask if she was worried, didn't even acknowledge the quiet fear trembling inside her. Instead, he muttered, "You're overreacting."
Women have babies every day. But the cruelty sharpened when it shifted from emotional to financial. Lena discovered her credit card declined one afternoon while trying to buy prenatal vitamins at CVS. Confused, she checked her account, only to see that Travis had quietly reduced her spending limit to practically nothing. When she confronted him, he shrugged. "I can't have you impulse buying baby stuff. We need structure." Structure, a word he used the way a surgeon used a scalpel. He took her car keys next, claiming she was too pregnant to drive safely. She felt embarrassed arguing with him, so she let it go. Then he kept the car at the office overnight. Then for 3 nights. Then for a week. By the time she realized it, she wasn't leaving the apartment unless he allowed it. The final blow came the morning she told him the baby's kicks had become irregular. Panic filled her voice as she asked him to come with her to get checked. Without looking up from his MacBook, he replied, "Lena, you always exaggerate. I have a meeting. Call an Uber." He didn't glance at her. He didn't see the tear slip down her cheek. He didn't notice her fear. And that was when Lena realized Travis wasn't just drifting away. He was pushing her out of his life, slowly, intentionally, until she disappeared on her own. He simply never expected she'd disappear on her terms. The moment that broke Lena didn't arrive with shouting or betrayal caught on camera. It arrived in silence so heavy, so absolute, that she felt something inside her crack in a way she knew could never be repaired. It happened 3 nights after she discovered the elevator footage. Lena sat on the edge of their king-sized bed, the soft glow of a bedside lamp casting a warm circle around her swollen belly. She tried to steady her breathing, but every inhale sent a sharp ache through her ribs. The baby wasn't moving as much as usual. That terrified her more than anything Travis had done. She called out, "Travis? Can you come here for a second?" No answer. She tried again, louder this time. Still nothing. She pushed herself up, one hand gripping the nightstand, and walked slowly toward his home office. The door was half open. Travis sat inside, illuminated by the blue glow of his dual monitors. A Mont Blanc pen rested between his fingers as he scribbled notes across a stack of documents, contracts, numbers, signatures she didn't recognize. "Travis," she whispered, "I think something's wrong. The baby isn't kicking much tonight." He didn't even look up. "Lena, not now. I'm working." "I'm scared," she said, her voice trembling. "I feel off." "I think we should call the doctor." He clicked his mouse, scrolled, typed. "You're fine," he said flatly. "It's normal. Stop panicking all the time." She took a shaky step closer. "Please, can you at least come sit with me?" This time he looked up, but not with concern, with annoyance. "I have a major investor call at 9 tomorrow. I don't have time for another one of your emotional episodes." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Emotional episodes. That's what he thought this was. Not fear, not instinct, not a mother's intuition, just inconvenience. She pressed both hands to her belly, willing herself not to cry. "Travis, I really need you." He turned back to his laptop. "Then stop needing so much."
Those 5 words hit harder than any betrayal she had witnessed on screen. Harder than the lies, the distance, the cruelty. Because in that moment, standing barefoot on the hardwood floor, heart pounding, baby silent, Lena finally understood a truth she had spent months avoiding. She wasn't waiting for Travis to come back to her. He had already left. All that remained was the ghost of a marriage she'd been holding up alone. A tear slid down her cheek as she whispered to herself, "I can't stay here anymore." And for the first time, she meant it. The cursor blinked on her laptop screen like a heartbeat, steady, relentless, waiting. Lena stared at the numbers in their joint accounts. More money than she had ever seen in her life. Money she once believed belonged to both of them. Money she earned through long nights at the office, extra reports she volunteered for, weekends spent verifying spreadsheets while Travis attended networking events that now seemed more like excuses than obligations. Her hands trembled over the trackpad. Her breath felt thin, fragile. She wasn't a thief. She wasn't vindictive. But she was done being helpless. The baby kicked, finally, weak but present, as if reminding her she wasn't making this choice alone. Lena whispered, "I'm doing this for us." Then she clicked Transfer Funds. A prompt appeared. Confirm transfer. Amount, full balance. Destination account, LW, personal, closed, 2018. Yes, closed, but not deleted. A dormant account from her college years, the only thing in her name that Travis never bothered to ask about because it once held less than $50. Now, it would hold everything he'd taken from her: time, love, trust, security, converted into numbers, the only language Travis ever valued. Her finger hovered over the button. She pictured his face when he discovered what she'd done. The shock, the anger, the disbelief that she, the quiet wife who apologized for everything, had finally done something he couldn't control. For the first time in months, a flicker of strength moved through her chest. She pressed confirm. The screen flashed, transfer completed. It was done. No fireworks, no dramatic music, just silence, and an unexpected wave of relief that nearly brought her to her knees. But she wasn't finished. Lena opened a second folder on her desktop. Scanned documents, saved screenshots, forwarded emails. Evidence she never meant to collect, but couldn't ignore. Irregular statements, strange transfers, the $50,000 wire she discovered last week. Pieces of a puzzle she hadn't fully understood until now. Pieces that could destroy Travis if they landed in the right hands. She uploaded everything to a secure cloud drive under a new username, one she created when she was 19. Northstar 87. A name that reminded her of guidance, escape, direction. Then she deleted the local files, cleared the browser history, logged out of everything. Her heart thudded against her ribs as she reached for the duffel bag she'd packed earlier, clothes, documents, prenatal vitamins. The baby's first ultrasound photo tucked carefully between 2 sweaters. She didn't look back at the apartment. She didn't need to. The life behind her was gone. The life ahead was uncertain. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid. Lena turned off the lights, placed her hand on her belly, and whispered, "We're leaving tonight." The hallway outside their apartment felt colder than it ever had before. Maybe it was the draft. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe it was the sharp, dizzying freedom of taking her first step away from the life that had been suffocating her for months. Lena tightened her grip on the duffel bag, the straps digging into her palm as the elevator chimed softly. Ground floor. No turning back. Her breath trembled as she stepped inside, pressing the lobby button with a hand that wouldn't stay steady. The doors slid shut, sealing her off from the penthouse that had once felt like home, and had slowly transformed into a cage lined with polished marble and silent resentment. The elevator's descent was slow, painfully slow. Each floor passed with a soft ding. 12 chances for panic to stop her. 11 chances for guilt to claw its way into her throat. But nothing came. Not fear, not hesitation. Just purpose. The lobby was quiet at 3:12 a.m., washed in the warm gold glow of high-end lighting. The night concierge glanced up from behind the sleek marble desk, surprise flickering across his expression when he saw Lena, heavily pregnant, bag slung over her shoulder. "Mrs. Whitford, are you expecting someone to pick you up?" he asked gently. Lena forced a smile. "Just heading out for a bit." He looked concerned, but didn't question her. Wealth had a way of granting people the illusion of safety. They assumed tragedy never touched penthouses. They assumed women like her always returned home by dawn. She wouldn't. Outside, the air slapped her cheeks with icy Manhattan wind. Taxis rolled lazily past, leaving streaks of yellow light across the slick pavement. Lena raised her arm, and one pulled over instantly. The driver, a gray-haired man with kind eyes, helped her load the bag. "Where to, miss?" Lena hesitated. She couldn't say her destination out loud. Not the real one. Not yet. "Penn Station," she said softly. "Please." As the cab pulled away from the curb, she looked up at the towering building behind her. One window glowed on the 33rd floor, Travis's office. He was still awake, still working, still oblivious. He would wake in a few hours to find the bed empty, the apartment silent, the accounts drained, his wife gone. But Lena didn't linger on that. She pressed a hand to her belly as the city blurred past. "It's just us now," she whispered. "And we're going to be safe. I promise." For the first time in months, she believed herself. Travis Whitford pushed through the lobby doors just after sunrise, the harsh winter light slicing across his face like a blade. He looked exhausted, tie crooked, eyes bloodshot, the sour smell of whiskey clinging to his suit. The night with Alara had dragged far later than planned. Too much champagne,
Too many whispered promises. Too much arrogance convincing him he could juggle 2 lives forever. He didn't notice the concierge's stiff posture when he walked past. He didn't notice the absence of Lena's usual prenatal tea mug in the sink. He didn't notice the silence. Not at first. He headed straight for the bedroom, already annoyed at the idea of facing his wife's emotional moods, as he liked to call them. He swung the door open with a careless shove and froze. The bed was made, the blankets smooth, the pillows undented. Lena hadn't slept here. He frowned, tossing his jacket onto a chair. "Lena, you up?" he called out, irritation building in his voice. "I don't have time for one of your—" He stepped into the walk-in closet. Her coats were gone. Her maternity backpack was gone. Her shoes, every pair except a worn pair of sneakers, were gone. A tiny ripple of unease nudged his chest. He marched to the kitchen. No breakfast containers. No vitamins on the counter. No trace of the woman who always tried to make mornings gentle no matter how cruel the night before had been. "Lena," he snapped, louder now. "This isn't funny." Still nothing. He grabbed his phone, intending to track her location, but it buzzed before he could open it. A notification from the bank. Alert. Joint account balance, $0. Alert. Transfer completed,
full balance withdrawn. His heart slammed against his ribs. He opened the banking app. The numbers were gone, all of them. Every account connected to Lena's name had been emptied completely, legally, cleanly, perfectly. No, Travis muttered, pacing as panic began to bloom in his throat. No, she wouldn't. She couldn't. But she had. He rushed into his office, typing Lena's email into his system, trying to access her files, her location history, anything. Access denied. She had locked everything. The quiet wife, he assumed, was too timid to jaywalk, had outmaneuvered him in a single night. His phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. One line. Don't look for her. Travis's face drained of color. For the first time, he felt it. The unmistakable chill of a man who suddenly realized he wasn't the predator anymore. He was the prey. Travis Whitford had always believed he was untouchable. Men like him, polished, charming, backed by corporations and expensive lawyers, moved through Manhattan like they owned the pavement beneath their designer shoes. But that illusion began to fracture the moment Lena disappeared. By noon, panic had seeped into his bloodstream like poison. He stormed into his office at Sterling Group, slamming the door so hard his assistants flinched. His phone buzzed nonstop. Alerts, flagged transfers, failed logins. Every attempt to regain control ended in another digital dead end. And then came the worst hit yet. The compliance director, a stern man named Roland Pierce, stepped into his office holding a thick file. "Travis," he said carefully, "we need to talk. Now." Travis stiffened. "Not today, Roland. My wife, this is about the transfers connected to the Boston investor." Silence. A dangerous silence. Travis forced a laugh. "You're reaching. Those were routine." Roland didn't blink. "Routine transfers aren't flagged by federal regulators, Travis." A cold jolt shot through him. "Flagged?" Roland set the file on his desk. Inside were printed statements, wire trails, and the unmistakable red marks of a financial investigation underway. "We received an inquiry this morning," Roland continued. "Your wife's withdrawal triggered a review of all accounts tied to you." His voice lowered. "Are you involved in something we should know about?" Travis swallowed hard. He had spent months hiding his role in funneling money for a foreign investor whose background he should have vetted but didn't, because they paid too well, too fast, and asked zero questions. He thought he could bury the paper trail. He thought Lena's name on several accounts would make everything look clean. He never imagined she'd walk away and take the smoke screen with her. He shut the file so abruptly it echoed. "I'll handle it." Roland stared at him for a long, heavy moment, as though seeing him clearly for the first time. "For your sake, I hope you can." When the door closed behind him, Travis finally let his facade slip. Sweat beaded at his temples. His pulse hammered. This wasn't about a missing wife anymore. This was about survival. He grabbed his phone and dialed Ilara. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. He didn't know that Ilara wasn't ignoring him. She was already in another part of the city, meeting with someone Travis wouldn't expect. Someone who now held the power to destroy him completely. And they all wanted one thing: to find Lena before he did. The train ride to Vermont felt unreal, like Lena was drifting through someone else's life. She kept one hand over her belly the entire journey, counting each soft kick, whispering reassurances the way a mother comforts a frightened child. Snow blanketed the countryside. a white silence replacing the noise of Manhattan she had lived in for years.
For the first time in a long time, no one knew where she was.
But freedom came with fear. Every mile farther from the city felt like a borrowed breath. By the time she reached the small mountain town near Stowe, exhaustion had settled deep into her bones. The kind-faced Airbnb host, a retired teacher named Mrs. Callahan, handed her the key to a secluded wooden cabin and insisted on helping her carry the duffel bag. "You're all alone, sweetheart?" the older woman asked gently. Lena forced a smile. "Just for a little while." The cabin was small but warm, with pine walls, a crackling fireplace, and a quilted blanket draped across a worn leather couch. A stack of old books sat beside a lamp, novels, travel guides, a copy of Women Who Run with the Wolves. She brushed her hand along the cover, feeling the weight of the metaphor. She could breathe here. She hoped she could.
But by nightfall, the first wave of dizziness hit. Then a sharp pain. Then a terrifying stillness in her belly.
"No, please, not now,"
Lena whispered, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter as her knees buckled. She tried to steady her breathing, tried to stay upright, but her vision blurred at the edges. The stress of the past days was catching up to her. Her body was giving out. She reached for her phone, only 4% battery. No signal, of course. She tried to move toward the door, but the room spun violently. The world tilted. Her legs gave way. Her last conscious thought was of her baby.
"Hold on," she whispered. "Hold on for me."
She didn't hear the door burst open minutes later. Didn't hear the crunch of snow boots thundering across the wooden floor. Didn't hear the voice calling her name in a panic she had never known from any man before. "Lena! Lena, can you hear me?" Dr. Dalton Grayson knelt beside her, gathering her limp body into his arms with a mixture of terror and urgency. "I've got you," he said, lifting her gently. "You're not alone. Not anymore." The world went dark, but Lena was finally safe. Lena woke to the faint beeping of medical monitors and the sterile scent of antiseptic, a smell she associated with fear ever since her early doctor visits. Her eyelids felt heavy, as if the world were wrapped in fog. When she finally pried them open, she saw a dim hospital room, snow quietly falling outside the window, and a man sitting in a chair beside her bed, shoulders tense, eyes fixed on her with an intensity that didn't match the calmness of his suit. "Lena," he breathed, rising instantly. "You're awake." Her heart stumbled. "Dalton?" Dr. Dalton Grayson, her former boss, the one man who ever believed she deserved better, stood at her bedside like someone who had been holding his breath for hours. In truth, he had. He hadn't slept since receiving the emergency alert tied to the encrypted email Lena set up long ago. A safety net she never expected to use. A safety net he always hoped she would. "What? How did you find me?" she whispered, her voice weak. Dalton exhaled heavily. "You sent me a message, Lena, months ago. You wrote, 'If something ever happens, this is where the truth is.' I promised myself I would never ignore it." Her gaze flicked toward the small table where her duffel bag sat. Everything she had left in the world was zipped inside that single worn canvas pouch. "The baby?" she whispered. He softened immediately. "Stable. You were dehydrated, exhausted, and your blood pressure dropped dangerously low, but you got help in time." He paused, eyes darkening. "Barely." Tears pricked her eyes, fear, relief, shame tangled into one overwhelming knot. "I didn't know who else to call," she said. I didn't think anyone would come. His jaw tightened. You mattered to me long before you knew you needed help. Lena froze. It was the first honest affection she'd heard from a man in years. But Dalton wasn't finished. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folder, thin, neat, but heavy with meaning. I didn't just come to save your life, he said quietly. I came because this, he tapped the folder, proves you were innocent in the accounting scandal you were blamed for. Travis set you up, Lena, and I can prove it. Her breath hitched. The betrayal she thought she understood suddenly grew tenfold. Dalton stepped closer, voice low and steady. I'm going to protect you. Legally, financially, physically, whatever it takes. For the first time in months, Lena didn't feel like she was drowning. For the first time, she felt seen. Lena lay against the hospital pillows, fingers curled loosely around the blanket, as Dalton opened the thin folder with a gravity that made her chest tighten. She had spent years trying to forget the file that ruined her life, the one mistake she never made, the scandal that dragged her name through the mud and left her grateful that Travis ever saved her. But the folder Dalton held wasn't a ghost from her past. It was proof. Proof she had been right to doubt herself. Proof Travis had taken far more than her dignity. Dalton placed the papers gently on her lap. Start with the first page, he said softly. It was an email, time-stamped, flagged, forwarded through a private server. Her name appeared twice, her login code once, but the approval signature wasn't hers. This isn't my handwriting, she whispered. Dalton nodded. Because it isn't yours. Travis forged your digital signature. He timed it perfectly, waited until you were on medical leave with flu complications, then used your credentials to authorize a transfer that should have triggered an investigation. Lena felt cold, a deep, sickening cold. You lost your job, Dalton continued, because Travis needed someone to blame, someone quiet, someone who wouldn't fight back. She closed her eyes, bile rising in her throat. For years, she believed she had messed up, that she was the weak link. She apologized endlessly, doubted herself every day, let Travis speak over her, shape her, shrink her. He told me I was careless, she whispered, that it was my fault the firm took a loss. Dalton's jaw clenched, anger flickering through his otherwise composed expression. He needed you indebted to him, dependent, grateful. Men like Travis don't love, they recruit. The words hit harder than truth should. And the worst part, Dalton added, lowering his voice, is that the same investors he worked with then are tied to him now. The $50,000 transfer you discovered? It links directly back to the original laundering chain. Lena stared at him, stunned. So, he's been using my name for years? Dalton held her gaze. Yes, and by disappearing when you did, you unintentionally dismantled his entire defense. The realization washed over her like a tide, terrifying, liberating, overwhelming. She wasn't just running from Travis. She was the missing piece investigators needed. She was the variable he couldn't control. Dalton stepped closer, voice gentle. You weren't the weak one, Lena. You were the target. And now, you're the key. For the first time in her life, Lena felt the weight of her story shift, away from shame and toward justice. While Lena recovered in a quiet corner of Vermont, Manhattan churned with the kind of chaos Travis Whitford never believed could touch him. The disappearance of his wife had shaken him, but the financial inquiry now circling Sterling Group tightened around his neck like a noose. But nothing unsettled him more
then Ilara June's silence. She wasn't answering his calls, not his texts, not even his encrypted messages. By late afternoon, paranoia gnawed at him, sharp and relentless. He stormed out of his office, brushing past startled interns and heading straight for the private elevator.
If Ilara thought she could ghost him now, when everything was falling apart, she was mistaken. He reached her apartment on the Upper East Side and pounded on the door. "Ilara, open up!" No response. He pounded again. "We need to talk!" Still nothing. Just as he pulled out his phone to call building security, the door across the hallway creaked open. A middle-aged neighbor holding a bag of groceries eyed him with thinly veiled disdain. "If you're looking for Miss June," she said, "she moved out this morning, packed everything and left in a hurry." Travis froze. "Moved out? Where?" The woman shrugged. "She had a car waiting, black SUV, out-of-state plates." His mind raced. Ilara wasn't the type to run. She was the type to cling, to scheme, to manipulate, but not disappear. Unless... His phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. One attachment. He opened it. A recording. Ilara's voice filled the hallway. Sweet, cold, unmistakably deliberate. "Travis, darling, you really thought I'd risk everything for you. I kept every recording, every confession, every detail about your little side business. Consider this insurance. If I go down, you go first." The recording ended. Travis felt the blood drain from his face. She had recorded him. Not just the affair, not just the lies, but the illegal transfers, the real secret he'd buried for years. He stumbled back, gripping the wall for balance. His heart hammered so loudly he barely heard the neighbor's door close. Another message came in. A second attachment. This one from a federal domain. "Mr. Whitford, we request your presence regarding an urgent financial investigation. Failure to respond will result in formal action." The walls around him were closing in, and Ilara had thrown the first stone. He thought he controlled her. He thought Lena was the weak one. He thought he held all the power. But now, both women had slipped beyond his reach, and the consequences were only beginning. Snow drifted against the windows of the private recovery suite Dalton had arranged, soft flakes catching in the evening light. Lena sat propped against crisp white pillows, wearing a loose sweater Dalton had brought her, comfortable, warm, nothing like the restrictive luxury Travis used to insist she wear. For the first time in months, she felt her lungs fill fully. She felt room. Room to breathe, room to think, room to exist without fear. Dalton entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of herbal tea. His coat was dusted with snow, his expression softened by something Lena couldn't name yet. Concern, perhaps, or something deeper he was too respectful to show. "You look better today," he said gently as he handed her a cup. Lena nodded. "Because of you." He shook his head. "Because you chose to survive." The words hit her harder than expected. She'd spent so long trapped in the narrative Travis wrote for her that she was weak, emotional, unsteady, that she never realized how much strength it took simply to keep going. Dalton sat beside her bed but didn't crowd her. He waited. He let her speak, something Travis never did. "Everything I thought I knew," Lena whispered, staring at the rising steam from her tea. "It wasn't real. Travis didn't love me. He loved controlling me. And I let him because I thought that's what marriage was supposed to look like." Dalton's voice dropped. "That wasn't love. That was ownership." "Then why didn't I see it?" Her voice cracked. "Why did everyone else see it before I did?"
Because hopeful people don't look for monsters, Dalton replied softly. But once you see one clearly, you never go back. The truth settled between them, heavy, painful, freeing. Lena wiped her eyes. What happens next? Dalton reached into his briefcase and placed a passport, prepaid phone, and several legal documents on the bedside table. What happens next, he said, is whatever you decide. But you're not running anymore. Not from Travis, not from your past, and certainly not from your own life. Her breath trembled. That word, your, felt like a spark inside her ribs. He continued, Investigators want to speak with you. You're the one person who can unravel everything. And when you're ready, I'll be beside you. Lena looked at him then, really looked. At the steadiness, the quiet certainty, the kind of safety she'd never known.
For the first time since her world shattered, she saw a version of herself standing again, not hiding, not apologizing, not breaking, rising. The boardroom on the 42nd floor of Sterling Group was designed to intimidate, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Park Avenue, a glossy mahogany table long enough to seat 20 executives, and a skyline sharp enough to cut through any illusion of power. Travis Whitford had always felt invincible here. This room was his arena, his kingdom, the place where he closed deals, charmed investors, and manipulated anyone necessary to protect his throne. But today he couldn't stop sweating. The federal inquiry had escalated overnight. 2 agents waited outside the boardroom. Roland Pierce, the compliance director, stood at the far end of the table with a folder in hand and an expression Travis couldn't read. And every attempt Travis made to reach Alara had failed. Her number disconnected, her apartment empty, her silence louder than any confession. Then the door opened. Travis straightened, expecting more agents. Instead, Lena walked in. Not the trembling, apologetic wife he once dismissed. Not the fragile woman he believed would break without him. But a version of her he had never seen before. Steady, composed, dressed simply but elegantly, her posture straight despite the weight of her near-term pregnancy. And she wasn't alone. Dalton Grayson entered beside her, projecting a calm authority that made even senior board members glance away. His presence wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Dalton was the kind of man whose silence carried more power than Travis's shouting ever could. Travis's jaw clenched. Lena, what are you doing here? Lena's gaze didn't flinch. Finishing what you started. A murmur rippled across the room. Dalton placed a thick folder on the table. This contains evidence of forged signatures, unauthorized transfers, and laundering activities facilitated by Mr. Whitford under the guise of joint marital accounts he accessed without his wife's consent. Travis scoffed, but his voice shook. This is ridiculous. She's unstable. She ran away. She ran, Dalton cut in calmly, because you made staying dangerous. Roland opened the folder, scanning the documents. His expression hardened with each page. Travis, these signatures. This is your handwriting. Travis's mask cracked. No. Lena did this. She's lying. But Lena stepped forward, her voice soft yet unbreakable. I spent years believing I was the problem, that I ruined everything, that I needed you to survive. Her eyes glistened, not with weakness, but with truth finally spoken aloud. But you didn't marry me to love me. You married me to use me. The air stilled. No one moved.
Then Roland spoke the words Travis feared most. "Mr. Whitford, federal agents are waiting outside." Travis's face drained of color. Lena held his gaze, not with hate, but with closure. For the first time, he understood he had lost. The moment the boardroom doors opened and 2 federal agents stepped inside, Travis Whitford finally understood what true fear felt like. Not the fear of losing a deal or a bonus or even his reputation. He'd always believed he could rebuild those. No, this was deeper, primal, the kind that grips a man by the throat when he realizes the ground beneath him has vanished. "Mr.
Whitford," one agent said, badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. "You're coming with us." Travis stumbled backward. "You don't understand. I'm being framed. My wife, she's unstable. She ran away." Lena didn't move, didn't blink, didn't shrink the way she once did under his voice. She simply watched, one hand on her belly, her expression steady, almost heartbreakingly calm. "This isn't happening," Travis muttered, grabbing the back of a chair for balance as the agents approached. "You can't just arrest me in front of the board. Roland, say something. Dalton, this is illegal." Dalton met his gaze, unbothered. "What's illegal, Travis, is forging your wife's credentials and laundering money through her name." Roland closed the evidence folder with a grim finality. "We reviewed the signatures. We reviewed the timestamps. It's over." Travis's breath hitched. For a moment, the entire room saw the truth. Without money, without power, without arrogance, he was small. Smaller than anyone imagined. "No, you can't. Lena, tell them," he begged, his voice cracking. "Tell them you didn't mean to do this to me." Lena took a step forward. The entire boardroom fell silent. "This isn't about what I meant," she said softly. "It's about what you did." Something inside Travis shattered. The agents pulled his wrists behind his back. The clink of handcuffs echoed through the boardroom, sharp, metallic, final. The same sound Lena once heard in nightmares she never understood until now. As they escorted him toward the door, Travis jerked his head toward her one last time. "You won't survive this without me," he spat. "You're nothing without—" But he never finished the sentence. Because Lena, quiet, gentle, once broken, looked him in the eyes and said the words he never believed she'd speak. "I survived you. That was the hardest part." The door shut behind him. Silence swept the room. A chapter closed. And somewhere deep inside her chest, Lena felt the first true breath of freedom. The courthouse steps were still cold beneath Lena's feet when the first contraction hit. Sharp, deep, a pressure that stole her breath and bent her forward before she could stop herself. Dalton caught her instantly, his hand steady at her back. "Lena, talk to me. How far apart are they?" She tried to answer, but another contraction surged, rolling through her body like a wave she couldn't outrun. Her fingers tightened around his sleeve. "Dalton, something's happening. It's early. Too early." His expression didn't waver, calm, controlled, exactly what she needed. "I've got you. Hold on." He guided her toward the waiting SUV, helping her inside, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders as she trembled. Snow flurries drifted past the windshield like white sparks. The city outside felt strangely quiet, as if the world itself had paused for this moment. "Deep breaths," Dalton said as he slid into the driver's seat. "You're safe. I'm right here." Lena focused on his voice, the only anchor she had as fear threaded through her chest.
Not fear of pain, not fear of the baby. Fear of doing this alone. She squeezed her eyes shut. "Dalton, what if I'm not ready?" "You are," he replied, without hesitation. "You've survived worse than this. You've fought your way out of hell, Lena. Bringing a life into the world? That's strength." His faith in her felt like a warm hand on her heart.
By the time they reached the hospital, nurses were already waiting, alerted by Dalton during the drive. They settled Lena into a delivery room, hooked monitors to her belly, and moved with practiced urgency. Dalton stayed at her side, refusing to leave, even when doctors hinted that family members should step out. "I'm not going anywhere," he told them. "She's not alone." Hours blurred, pain, breaths, whispered encouragements, the rhythmic beep of fetal monitors. At one point, Lena sobbed into her hands, overwhelmed. "I can't, Dalton. I can't do this." He leaned close, brushing a tear from her cheek with a tenderness that made her chest ache. "You already are, and when this is over, you'll hold the proof in your arms." One final push, one final cry, and then the room filled with the piercing, beautiful sound of new life. A nurse laid the tiny baby boy on Lena's chest. Her breath caught, her heart broke open. "He's perfect," she whispered. Dalton's voice softened. "Just like his mother." And for the first time, Lena felt it fully. Not just survival. Not just freedom. A beginning. The hospital room was quiet, except for the soft hum of machines and the delicate breaths of the tiny newborn sleeping in the bassinet beside Lena's bed. Morning sunlight slipped through the blinds, warm and golden, a stark contrast to the life she'd escaped mere days before. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lena wasn't afraid of tomorrow. Dalton returned with 2 cups of tea, setting one gently on the bedside table. He looked different today, not the stern CEO who walked through boardrooms like a storm, but a man softened by the sight of Lena holding her son. A man who seemed to carry something unspoken in the quiet space between them. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Tired. Happy. Terrified," she admitted, brushing a fingertip across her baby's tiny cheek. "That sounds about right for a new mother," he said with a small, warm smile. They sat in silence for a moment, comfortable and unhurried. But Lena could feel it, the shift in the air, the weight of something waiting to be said. She turned toward him. "Dalton, why did you really come for me? Not legally, not professionally. Really?" He inhaled slowly, as if he'd been holding the truth in his lungs for years. "Because I couldn't lose you again," he said quietly. Her breath caught. Dalton continued, voice steady but low. "I wanted to tell you long before you married Travis. But you were rebuilding your life, and you looked happy, and I thought stepping back was the right thing to do." His eyes met hers, sincere and unguarded. "But watching you walk away from that firm, from your future, because of something he did, that was the hardest decision I ever made. I should have fought harder." Lena felt her throat tighten, not from fear, not from pain, from recognition. A truth she hadn't let herself see before. She whispered, "Dalton, all this time, you cared?" "I never stopped," he answered. The room felt impossibly still, no buzzing monitors, no hospital chatter, just the sound of 2 hearts learning a new rhythm. Lena glanced at her son, then back at Dalton. "I don't know what comes next," she said honestly. "I'm still learning how to trust, how to breathe again." Dalton leaned forward, his hand resting gently on the bed beside hers. Not touching, not rushing. "I'm not asking for anything,"
he said softly. I just want you to know you have a choice now. Your life, your pace, your future.
And if one day that future includes me, I'll be grateful. If not, I'll still protect you both. Lena felt something shift again. Not shock, not fear, but the first bloom of hope. For the first time, love didn't feel like a cage. It felt like possibility. Spring arrived softly in Vermont, melting the last of the winter snow and replacing silence with birdsong. 3 months had passed since Lena gave birth. 3 months since the world she'd built on broken promises finally collapsed, only to be rebuilt on something steadier, something real. Today, she stood outside a small courthouse overlooking the mountains, her son tucked safely against her chest in a soft gray blanket. Fresh air filled her lungs, crisp and gentle. For the first time in years, she didn't feel watched. She didn't feel small. She didn't feel owned. She felt free. Dalton approached from behind, suit jacket draped over one arm, tie loosened in a way that made him look less like a CEO and more like the man who had spent the past 90 days changing diapers, warming bottles, and pacing hospital hallways with her son asleep on his shoulder. "Ready?" he asked. Lena nodded. "More than I ever thought I'd be." Inside the courthouse, the final hearing went quickly. Travis's conviction was airtight. Financial crimes, fraud, forged signatures, laundering. Elara's recordings sealed the deal. His sentencing made national news. His downfall was absolute. And today, Lena's divorce became finalized. But that wasn't the only document she was signing. When the judge handed her the final set of papers, Lena felt her throat tighten. At the top, in clean printed letters, was a new name: Lena Grayson. She looked at Dalton carefully. "Are you sure about this?" "It feels so soon." His voice softened. "I didn't ask for the name to claim you. I asked so you'd never carry his again. So your son never would. And because I meant everything I said in that hospital room." Lena pressed a trembling hand to her chest. For the first time, choosing love didn't feel like surrender. It felt like reclaiming something stolen from her years ago. "I want this," she said finally. Dalton exhaled, a quiet breath of relief and joy. Outside the courthouse, sunlight spilled over them as he took her hand, not to lead, not to claim, but simply to walk beside her. Her son stirred, tiny fingers curling around hers. A family, not forced, not trapped, chosen. As they stepped into the warm light, Lena felt the chapter close behind her, not with bitterness, not with regret, but with peace. She had survived betrayal. She had survived loss. She had survived a man who tried to make her disappear. And now, she was writing a life where she would never vanish again. All right, my wonderful friends. If you're still here with me at this moment, it means something in Lena's journey touched your heart in a way that words alone can't explain. And maybe, just maybe, you saw a piece of yourself in her strength, her fear, or her way of rising again after being broken. You know, the Stoics often reminded us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Marcus Aurelius wrote that centuries ago, yet it fits Lena's story perfectly. She couldn't change Travis. She couldn't change betrayal. But she could choose herself. And that choice changed everything. Her journey is a reminder for all of us. Healing isn't loud. It's not glamorous. Sometimes it looks like packing a bag in the middle of the night. Sometimes it looks like breathing again after years of holding your breath. Sometimes it's simply saying, "I deserve better," and taking one small step toward a life that finally reflects your worth. And, my friend, if you're listening right now, you deserve better too. Better love, better peace, better days ahead. If this story touched you, even a little, do me one small favor. Like the video, share it with someone who might need the reminder, and subscribe so we can keep walking through these stories together. Because healing isn't a journey you should ever walk alone. And I'm right here with you. Just a quick note for my amazing viewers. The story you've just watched is a work of fiction, created purely for emotional reflection and entertainment. None of the characters, events, or situations are based on real individuals, real companies, or real legal cases. Everything is written with the purpose of exploring human resilience, healing, and personal transformation. If any part of the story feels familiar to your own life, that's simply because many of us experience similar emotions, not because the characters are real. Fiction allows us to learn gently, without placing blame on anyone in the real world. So please remember, this narrative is symbolic, not factual. It's here to inspire, not to accuse. Thank you for understanding, and for supporting stories that help us grow, feel, and reflect together. Your presence means everything.